The spider saw her and said with surprise that this was a jungi, a corpse that retained its memories and was able to think critically. He was using this creature, which was difficult for even the most capable alchemists to control, as just a servant. This did not look like a sorcerer's dwelling. He did not know if what they had said so far was enough. But too much was not enough. Had jumped over the fence and said that he needed to fulfill the young master's order for him to listen to his request. The master of this temple sat in the middle of the temple and said that he asked for more prophecies and to send him bright oracles. The Jungshi approached him, bowed, and told the Stormlord that Madame Namong had arrived. He, without turning to her, said that she should let her in. She came closer to him and greeted him politely. He said that, as he could see, she was here because things had not gone according to plan. She was full of greed. Their God showed mercy to those who regularly turned to him, not to those who only asked for things. Sayong waved her hand with a calm expression and asked that if it was the one who contributed more to the temple than anyone else, what would say to that? Her servant brought out 2 boxes filled with resources, and the master said with a wide smile that of course he would show mercy to that person. He started examining the pearls and said that this was his favorite. However, it still needed a little more. She said that if everything worked out, she would add another box. He said Thada expected of her. She knew how to gain their god's favor. So, how could he help her? She asked. He remembered their request she had made last time, right? He said with a smile that the concubine's child's brainwashing was still in effect. She shook her head in refusal and said that the situation had changed. He needed something faster and more reliable. She thought that she had thought that he was just a pawn that could be used and discarded. But the thoughtfulness of his actions, coupled with Kujin's attitude, would cause her a lot of trouble. She asked in a serious voice if he could turn him into a junkshe. He laughed and said that she seemed to be very angry. The spider looked at this from the side, thought that they were crazy freaks, jumped out of the building, and said that he must notify the young master. If that freak, the Stormlord, is capable of creating jungi, then the young master will have a hard time dealing with him right now. He noticed the many monsters that were blocking his path and immediately realized that they were jungi beasts. He said with a worried look that the fact that he could create these monsters so easily meant that he was a sorcerer from the Blackbone Ghost Valley. The Myon sect faction had turned into a Heaven Liedman cult. The master heard the sounds of the monsters and laughed and said that it seemed like she was being followed. Their ghosts were very unusual. The patron behind the concubine's son might be more problematic than they thought. Sinon sighed with a dissatisfied look and said that she would add another box. This news made him happy, and she said that since she had increased the fee, he should reveal the identity of the puppeteer and also turn the concubinous child into a jungshi. The master laughed and agreed to it and asked, however, why should they look for his patron when himself had kindly come to them? Another jungshi ran up to him very quickly and asked his master, did heckle him? The master turned to him with a smile and said that he should capture the escaped ghost and find the sorcerer was behind him. The monster immediately jumped onto the roof of the building and said that he never thought that the jangi beasts had not caught him yet. He looked into the distance with a serious expression and whistled loudly. The spider continued to run away and said that he felt an extremely unpleasant energy. The spider continued to run away from the crowd of monsters with a serious expression and tried to warn his master of the danger before heading. At the same time, in the White Pavilion, the training room, when we asked, is she really not leaving? Quinn said with a smile that the weather is fine today. She will leave when she soars up a bit. He looked at her and thought that Yuch Chang, who had suffered a severe defeat, and Sayong, whose plans had been put to an end, would try to harm him without a second thought from now on. She knew it too. He started to leave and said that just stay out of his way. She agreed and said that he could not worry about her and train. The ghosts next to him said that for someone from the Xingchang sect, she certainly had a conscientious character. How could someone with such a character be that child of Hosen and a girl from the Namong family? He hit them and asked in his mind, would they shut up or did they want to turn into ghost pills? He began to examine the staff in his hand with a thoughtful look. This attracted the ghosts' attention, and one of them asked the young master, is there some kind of problem? He mentally said that something had changed in him after his training today. A ghost asked if he could find out how he felt. That said in his mind that before, when using martial arts, there was a delay between his thoughts and actions, something like a malfunctioning mechanism. He felt like it was because he was still a beginner in martial arts, even though there was a slight delay now, but he definitely felt that it had decreased. The ghost said that he was a senior mentor in the heavenly demon cult. Could he inspect his body? After receiving permission, he began to inspect his body from different angles. After that, he asked, had he ever heard of accumulated merit? He looked at Hyman and asked in his mind, this is not internal energy, right? The ghost said that they are different things. Usually, increasing internal energy involves habitual training. But enlightenment, family influence, the increase of the practitioner, mainly depends on him. He will grow as he receives merit. The MC calmly asked in his mind, in other words, accumulated merit depends on reputation, right? The ghost agreed and said that this was why even when using techniques that absorbed the internal energy of others, he was not actually increasing his own internal energy, that mech. Although he was a special case, and there was no clear research. It seemed to him that the merits accumulated over the years of his life of this body, and the new merits accumulated by him were very different, and perhaps the lag he was experiencing was a result of this. With a calm expression on his face, he mentally said that it seemed to him that the very fact of the lag was decreasing. He did not have time to finish because the ghost said that this meant that the accumulated merits of the young master and the new body were beginning to harmonize. When we thought that he meant that he had come to understand and accept the personality of the previous owner of this body, so his accumulated merits were beginning to harmonize with his merits. Since he could not consciously live as the previous owner of the body, even though he considered this body to be his own, subconsciously, he thought of his body as the body of another person. After the duel, his thoughts changed from he is using arts in someone else's body, to him being the one using martial arts. The feelings he experienced after meeting Quinn and Hosen, who did not take him seriously, slowly eroded his subconscious barrier. He mentally eskedho, much these merits were now connected. The ghost next to him said that it was about % connected. If that similarity continues to grow, he will be able to easily achieve success in martial arts. The protagonist mentally said that this is great. This is all he needs. He began to practice with the staff and thought that in order to perfect the mystic art, harmony between the body and soul is necessary. He is confident that the higher the connection between the body and his soul grows, the faster he will achieve the same level of mystic arts as in his past life. Hujin looked at him and thought that a lot had changed. She could not imagine that he would practice martial arts so confidently and enthusiastically. Although she felt sad and guilty for making him change, he started building his own castle. From now on, his walls would only grow higher. But Mom wouldn't wait for his castle to be finished. Spirit appeared next to her and said with a smile that something was approaching. Hearing this, she thought with a serious expression that everything was as she expected. The ghosts also sensed something strange and warned MC, and he said that it was a ghost fog. He said with a big smile that Bekos, of the Cinnabar poison-making style, he already knew that they were using ghost witchcraft. It looks like Thee finally got hooked. Now he'll see how big the fish is. Jangi stood on the roof nearby and said that the trail led him here. According to the Lord's guests, the patron behind the concubine's son uses a special kind of ghost witchcraft. Such a person is likely to use a unique magic tool. Since the trail ends here, it means the sorcerer is somewhere nearby. He can't wait to meet him. The fog has risen quite high. The ghost fog has the property of blocking consciousness, and if he restricts it to forming a thorny ghost fog, no matter what happens inside of this fog, no one from the outside will notice. Where is his prey now? He noticed a thread of energy that leads Taoanui, and it caught his attention. He wondered why this thread leads to his second target, the concubine's son. It turns out that he covered his tracks. Apparently, the sorcerer did not use ghost sorcery himself. Instead, he used said the concubine's child to activate the mystic arts technique. He noticed this monster and asked with a sly smile, what kind of fog was this that he could not see anything in? Jungi walked towards him and thought that his opponent was a puppeteer who was smarter than he thought. However, since the concubine's child was also his target, if he attacked him, the puppeteer would definitely show himself. In any case, he can't sense anything around him because the ghost fog. If he stands still, it will turn him into a Jungi, even if all his limbs are intact. He looked to the other side and saw Hujin walking towards them while emitting a powerful aura. She ran up to that monster very quickly, dealt a very strong blow, and loudly said that he was caught. MC turned around with a smile and said that it was a big fish after all. He never thought that they would send a deadly swordsman and Gouda here. The ghosts next to him said that they were definitely from Blackbone Ghost Valley. However, this guy looks like a deadly swordsman of at least rank 3. Is everything going according to plan? He started searching for something in his inner pocket and said that a Taoist from the Qin and Chang sect would hardly lose to a Jiang Shi of the same rank. But the problem is that this monster is an assassin sent by Xiang. Is his sister in control of the situation, or is she simply doing her duty as a Taoist to eliminate evil? He ate a pill while she was fighting and said that he could only trust her determination. Now, Jiang Yi tried to break free from Kun's grip and wondered, is this Qin Chang's word energy? This is a Taoist arriving in the Nine Dragons district. This girl must be the daughter of the Tan family. But why is she here? He was able to break free from her grip, jumped away from her, and was about to say something to her. She ran up to him very quickly, swung her sword, and said loudly that she would not listen to pathetic demons. This vile Jungi must die again. His hands were shaking from her swift sword strikes, and thought that he could nothindel her. Even if he achieved his goal, he could not fight with his full strength, lest he injure her. Otherwise, Lady Namon would break the contract. If that happened, the Lord would become furious and torture him. Qin Vera quickly began to attack him with her sword and asked loudly, what was he thinking about? She used the sword art of Qing Chang, cutting the blade incredibly fast. She struck many swift sword strikes and said loudly that Heshold stop thinking and just die. Blood was flowing from the wounds of this monster, and he thought that he could die here. He was thrown back and thought that since he was going to die anyway, he said loudly that he pied her because she was Lady Namon's daughter, but it was her own fault for not listening to him. He took off the bandages that were wrapped around his hands and a very strong energy engulfed him. His body grew very large, and blades came out of his hands thanks to the technique of ghost transformation. Keen looked at this huge monster who was standing in front of her with a surprised expression. He struck a very strong blow with the blade on his hand, but she was able to block this blow with her sword. Jungi looked at her and said loudly that if she retreated, she would not be hurt at all, and it would be easier for both of them, because his mission was Lady Namon's request. She continued to hold back his blow, despite the fact that she did not have enough strength, and thought that Chesel not hesitate. She already knew that this was all her mother's plan. Her eyes lit up with energy, and she thought that she had to defeat him. Find out who was behind him and convince her mother to turn away from this path. She pushed his hand away and he asked loudly, is this anti-demon energy? How prim and proper she is, and really very stubborn. He threw a very strong punch, but she managed to jump aside. He thought that if only she weren't so stubborn. If the battle continued, despite the thorny ghost fog, the Wind of Justice squad would discover them. He didn't know when the puppeteer would appear at all. He would be at a disadvantage if the battle continued. The ghost fog would weaken soon, so he had no choice but to use Guru. His target was still the concubine's son. A monster was flying gobbo of them and let out a very loud cry. The ghost looked at this and said to the young master that he would not allow Gada to release more ghost fog. Wui looked up with a smile and said that he finally used Garuda. He almost fell asleep from boredom. The ghost said that it would be better if the stubborn girl fought Gushio and the deadly sword. The flying monster flew towards him very quickly with its mouth wide open. He stood still calmly and said that it was so noisy at night. He looked at it with a serious expression on his face and said that he had to bow down before him. He used the first stage of Purple Eye's tormenting evil ghost. The monster was frightened by this and crashed into the ground after flying close to him. He looked at the monster that crashed into the ground and said that He didn't mean so low. The ghosts examined this monster and said that the surprising thing was that it didn't even bend its neck. Gouda seems to have a sturdy body to begin with. A huge amount of resources and time must have been spent on creating this guy. They just had to attack him. The protagonist looked at this with a confused look and said that this is not even his ability, but he is so excited. He must get up immediately. Gurio, who was stuck in the ground, suddenly came out from under the ground and looked at him with a frightened look. He sat calmly next to him and said that he will give him two options. Either he will fight with that Jungshi, or with him because he looked at them with a wide and scary smile. The monster immediately flew away from him. Gudia began to attack that monster, which confused him, and he loudly asked why he was attacking him. Did that guy really take control of him? He thought that Thepapatir's ability was enough to take control of Garuda. What's more dangerous is that it means the enemy is somewhere in a body. Kazjun jumped behind him, swung her sword, laughed, and said that by turning the other way, he was tempting her to cut him. With this strike, she cut off the arm of this monster. He looked at her and wondered why she just cut off his left arm. He asked with a worried look, what did this mean? She could have killed him with this attack. She shouldn't tell him that she decided to retreat because of Lady Namon. She said with a big smile that of course that wasn't the case. She planned to cut him into pieces to make him repent of his mistakes. Then she would slowly save his soul. He called her crazy in a worried voice and asked if this was how Taoists acted when they tried to help others. Garudio flew next to him and slashed his face with his claws. Janja turned around to look at this monster and loudly called it a mindless bird. Kujin thought that she didn't know why the Jungi beast that released the ghost fog was acting like this around her brother, but she needed to get rid of the remnants of the ghost fog. She used the hermit-style, evil destruction crushing strike and began to make mana-quick sword strikes. The Jungi stood still and thought that the ghost's transformation technique was dissipating. He needed to find an opportunity to escape from here while there were still remnants of the ghost fog. He gathered energy in his palm, slammed the ground, and pushed it back a few meters. Immediately after, he jumped and tried to grab his severed arm. Gouda flew towards him, as did Hu, loudly asked, where is he going? He used the explosion skill, causing his arm to emit powerful energy. That arm exploded, causing her to be unable to catch up with him and block it. Immediately after that, she ran towards him very quickly to strike him again with her sword. Tajunji managed to take out the pill he used and disappeared at the moment of her attack. She turned around and said that everything was going according to his plan. He should be careful. Someone was using demonic arts. MC sat next to her and asked if she could help him. He started telling her his plan and she asked if he meant that they should not kill the Jangi, who intended to attack them. He agreed and said that they needed to gather enchantment first. Although the escapee belonged to a side branch of the clan, he was still able to infiltrate the main manor and spread the coast mist. The enemy must be strong enough to use enchantment. If he feels threatened, he will simply use their turn talisman to escape. Right now, he is not strong enough to defeat such a Jangi in the place he cast enchantment. However, if she could dispel this, then he would reveal the identity of the person behind this monster that dared to attack the Nine Dragon County. Chin said that if he was telling the truth, then the Jangi they were dealing with wasn't by her mother. What would he do if she decided to submit to her mother's will? Wui stood up and said with a small smile that in that case, he would just end up being a loser in this game of scheming. Isn't this what it means to be part of the Tan clan? She was a little surprised by this and thought that to him who had been through so much hardship, the Tanlin was just a bunch of lying and deceitful people. However, she was sure that he would understand that not everyone was like this. It would take a little more effort. Gudla landed next to them. She looked at it and said that he was that beast after all. She looked at it with a cruel smile and asked, does he want more? This scared the monster very much, while the Jungi they injured ran to safety with incredible speed. He said with a worried look that he couldn't believe that he was running away after a failed mission, even if he reattached his arm. After losing Garuda and increasing the security in the Nine Dragon District, the master would never forgive him. Olaf, this happened because of that damn woman. The protagonist caught up with him and said that if he was going to rest here, he should have gone further away. Did he seriously just leave the mansion? The monster jumped back with a frightened look and wondered, have they already tracked him down? He looked at him and wondered, is this the concubine's son? What is he doing here? And how was he able to track him down? Could it be that the puppeteer is pulling the strings? They should have tracked down the source of the thorny ghost fog spell. Since they were able to take control of Garuda, it doesn't matter. He has to use this chance. If He catches him, he can reveal the identity of the puppeteer and bring back Gurio. He noticed the ghostly energy emanating from him and thought that it seemed like the patron had assigned some wandering ghost to him. However, this form he looked at the monster in front of him with a grin and said that he knew that son was completely desperate. But he never thought that someone from the Namon clan was an ally of the Blackbone Ghost Valley. Zheng Shi was very surprised by this, and loudly asked how he knew about this. He looked at him with a smile, began to emit energy, and asked, who knows? This energy finally engulfed his body, and the monster said loudly, in a very suppressed voice, that this is the battle robe of an evil ghost. MC said that it turns out that he knows what it is, which means He's old enough. Zhangxi thought about the evil ghost's battle attire. Years ago, everyone in Blackbone Ghost Valley knew about it. This was a witchcraft weapon that the young heavenly demon used whenever he created chaos. So this ghost energy, is it an evil ghost? He asked loudly. Why does he, of all people, have such a thing? He looked at him with a serious expression and asked, does he really think he will answer? He has a lot of questions for him. Jinxie looked at him and asked loudly, does he really think he will answer these questions? Wui raised his hand and said that of course not right now. They need to talk after he is dead.